Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Number to call, 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. Glad to have you call in and talk about the President Obama nominating this defender of a cold-blooded cop killer to be head of the Civil Rights Division. What's your reaction to that? And on a completely different topic is how do you approach the Easter season? Is the Lenten season something that you have observed? Have you done something for the Lenten season? Is it something that you have maybe never considered because you always thought of it as something that maybe was attached to other faith traditions? And after listening to my conversation with Ray Pritchard, is that something maybe that you're thinking about, maybe even using his book or in some other way focusing on Christ during this Easter season? So that number is 888-589-8840. Now, one more soundbite while you're calling in I want to play. We were talking about this Mumia Abu Jamal, who shot a 25-year-old cop, Daniel Faulkner, to death in cold blood because he was arresting his brother, who was resisting arrest, routine traffic stop. Brother gets out of the car, confronts the officer, takes a swing at him. The officer has called for backup, and then he has to subdue the suspect, has his back turned to the brother who's watching this apparently from across the street. This Mumia Abu Jamal races across the street with his hand outstretched with a gun in his hand, shoots Officer Faulkner in the back twice. Officer Faulkner reaches for his gun, gets one shot off before he gets shot two more times by Mumia Abu Jamal. And then while he's lying on the ground, Mumia Abu Jamal puts a gun right at his head, I mean at point blank range, and puts a bullet right between his eyes. And the guy that President Obama has nominated to be in charge of the Civil Rights Division, he's a guy that believed that this Abu Jamal should get off, that he was unfairly convicted, he was unfairly sentenced to death, and he did get his death sentence overturned and replaced with life without parole. So, to me, I mean, this is an absolute miscarriage of justice. This guy should have been hung by the neck until dead after the conviction sentence was handed down in 1982. He's written books. He's become a celebrity. All of that represents a miscarriage of justice. And realize 5 witnesses identified him as the shooter. Eyewitnesses at the scene identified him. The 5 bullets that were taken out of Officer Faulkner's body matched the gun that was found on Abu Jamal. So all the forensics matched up. And you think about this, his brother, William Cook, he was the guy that was driving the car that was pulled over. He has never spoken. So realize, here is the guy's brother, grew up with this guy, and he did not testify on his brother's behalf. He didn't go into court and say, hey, I was there, my brother didn't do it. And so the fact that he would allow his brother to be sentenced to death without opening his mouth in his brother's defense certainly speaks volumes. In fact, what William Cook said to the police that showed up, remember they called for backup, they came just a minute or two later, and when the police approached him, he said, I ain't got nothing to do with this. Again, I ain't got nothing to do with this. So he professed his innocence, but never defended the innocence of his brother. And then when Abu Jamal was sentenced, he threatened the judge's life. He said this in court, I'm going to tell you one thing. You have sentenced yourself. You are wrong. You have just been sentenced to death. You have just been convicted. Now, here is the widow of Daniel Faulkner. Her name is Maureen Faulkner, clip number 7. She was on Fox News last night. She's been leading a campaign to have this man rejected as a nominee. I'd encourage you to call your senator. Call your senator's office today and say, vote against this guy, because the whole Senate's going to have to vote on this guy at some point. All it takes is 51 votes. Call your senator, urge them under no uncertain terms, vote against this guy. I don't care what party your senator belongs to. This would be a travesty for a guy that defended this cop killer to be appointed to the head of the Civil Rights Division. That's just grotesque. Now, here's what Maureen Faulkner said on Fox News last night about her efforts on behalf of her husband.
When he was managing director, the 2 attorneys that were below him were traveling to Paris to unveil Rue Mumia Abul Jamal Street in Paris. From what I understand, the Legal Defense Fund is a nonprofit organization who is paying for these people to go to Paris to praise this man who shot my husband in the back and then brutally stood over him and point blank shot him between the eyes.
We're looking at
and I
pictures.
must say, I am extremely emotional because I just found out.
How could you not be?
My heart goes out to, and also I just want to mention, as I was in the studio tonight, I just found out there was a Phoenix police officer who was shot and killed in the line of duty, and there's another one that is they're trying to save his life. And this happens so often. And people need to know these officers are out there, and they're trying to protect us. And we need to stand together and stand united and not allow this man to get in.
I'm looking at the record of the appeals process that this Abu Jamal went through. In 1989, the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court denied his appeal for release. In 1990, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to review his direct appeal. On October 29, 1998, the 7 justices of the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court unanimously denied Jamal's second appeal. Since Jamal's conviction in 1982, no less than 11 different judges, other than the original judge, Judge Sabo, the one whose life he threatened, have reviewed Jamal's often convoluted claims of innocence, police coercion, court wrongdoing. Not one of these judges has found any merit to any of Jamal's claims. The United States Supreme Court declined to hear his case for the second time in 1999. So again, call your senator, 202-224-3121. Again, that number, if you want to take a minute, I'll give you a second to grab a pen to write it down. The number to call your senator, 202-224-3121. You'll get the Capitol Hill switchboard. And you've got a number of Democrats that are vulnerable. They're vulnerable on this vote because people in America do not want a defender, a guy that actually got a cold-blooded cop killer out of a death sentence. They don't want that guy in charge of the Civil Rights Division. And these vulnerable Democrats, they know that. Bob Casey's a Democrat from Pennsylvania. He's vulnerable. He's already said he's going to vote against this guy. You think about these other Democrat senators that are vulnerable. Mary Landrieu of Louisiana. Louisiana doesn't want a guy that defended a cop killer being in charge of civil rights. Mark Pryor, Arkansas. People in Arkansas don't want that. Kay Hagan of North Carolina. Her approval rating is down to 33%. She cannot afford another misfire, so she's subject to pressure here to do the right thing. John Walsh of Montana. I mean, Montana is gun country. They believe in self-defense. They believe in law enforcement. They don't want a guy that defends a cop killer being appointed to this position. Mark Begich of Alaska. Al Franken of Minnesota is vulnerable. Joe Manchin, West Virginia. John Tester of Montana. So I don't care what state your senator represents, call them and tell them to vote no on this nominee to the Civil Rights Division. Well, let's go to the phones. Let's grab a call from Debbie, Spring Hill, Florida. Number, by the way, is 888-589-8840. Let's go to Debbie, Spring Hill, Florida. What's on your mind?
Hi, this is Debbie. I'm a mother of 8, and we've always celebrated Lent as a time of fasting, giving up something, and we always told our kids, if it doesn't move you, then it doesn't move God. So
you as a family...
we would give up television, and it took a lot of effort. The kids were, not always going along with it, but in the end, we learned to be a family. We played games. We discovered each other, and I just want to make a comment, too. I was at the public school today. My daughter, our last of our 8, is graduating this year. And we used to have school on Good Friday when we first moved here to Florida 12 years ago. A lot of us mothers protested to say, we're keeping our kids home on the day that we celebrate that Christ died for our sins.
Mm-hmm.
So now I notice that they do have off just one day in April. It is Good Friday, but they call it long weekend.
Can't even call it Good Friday. My gosh.
Yeah.
But at least they responded to the parental input and the parental request and at least gave folks that day off. Well,
Yeah.
Debbie, you've got a family of eight kids, and
Yep.
your youngest is now graduating from high school. Is that
17,
right?
Yeah. Our oldest is 40. We've been at this 40
Wow.
years.
So how many years running did you celebrate Lenten by giving up television?
Pretty much from the first child on.
Really?
Yeah.
And so your kids I can understand fought you on it. That's one of those electronic distractions
Well,
that's always
my
right there.
husband was the one gave us me the hardest time. But we would take a break on Sundays. Sunday's a day of rest, so whatever we were fasting from, we would allow them. We'd put a blanket, a towel, a nice covering over the television. Come Sunday, we would take it down, let them have that little bit of time, but Sunday evening, put that back up again and go again. And I just feel, in getting back to what's going on in our country, the Lord in His Word says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, that means us, fast, pray, seek my face, then will I hear from heaven and I will heal your land. So it's not about really getting anybody in office or whatever it's humbling ourselves, turning back to God, and then we're going to see our land healed.
All right, Debbie. Well, listen, I appreciate that very, very much. That's a great call. Debbie, Spring Hill, Florida, family of 8, and appreciate the call, Debbie. Thank you for that. And her family observed the Lenten season by giving up television. We talked about some of the other things that people are giving up for the Lenten season, chocolate or alcohol or profanity. And a lot of people realizing, look, I got to cut back on social networking. Twitter, Facebook is just consuming my time. I've got to let go of some of that so I can focus on God. And as Debbie said, that's the key to revival and bringing America back to where it needs to be. Focal Point AFR Talk. Stay with us. We'll be back after the news. Don't go anywhere.